ZK email. Just so I can get quick false check. Maybe like raise your hand if you've heard of ZK email before. Okay, maybe like captive people. Cool. Maybe raise your hand if you have like experience with ZK, like you use the ZK thing or you that you're on ZK. Okay. Okay. Maybe raise your hand if you're familiar with like basic cryptography, like either like the new blockchains or no signatures, things like that. Okay. More people. Sweet. Cool. So I'll try to go to a little bit more of the basics as well, and then I go over kind of the main topics. So some of the motivation of this project is that, and I would argue ZK in general, is that there's now this kind of pressure on humans to prove information more. You know, we have to prove that we're not an AI, that we're online. We have to prove our entity or humanity or the information we provide. You can argue that AI themselves often has to prove that they have access to somebody's account, and they may not want to reveal anything about it. Like, for instance, foods out who they are or the tasks they're doing, but also humans also might want this controllable anonymity. And you could also argue that agents might have to prove things to agents, like, for instance, that they're not being prompt injected, and the information they're actually getting is valid, that they represent a human that is on actual things and aren't just a sort of bots. And so now that we enter an age where, you know, humanity mattered before, but it really, really matters now, how can we somehow get this kind of verifiability in a compelling way? And ZK gives us like some steps towards it. Right? ZK allows us to say, here's a statement and prove it's true to a third party that revealing the original information. And the question is, what can we actually prove with this primitive? And there's lots of different infrastructure, lots of different competitors that think that allow us to do ZK proofs, but what exactly do we prove? One idea is that, well, what if we could just hijack existing cryptography that we already use every day? So the most common, digital cryptography signature that exists today is digital cryptography that exists today is signatures. And the most common use of signatures is, at least today, in emails. Billions to trillions of emails are sent each day, month, year, and all of them have this like piece of cryptography in the background that you have heard of called the decrypt protocol, which is basically every time you send an email, well, how do you actually verify that the email you got was from, I don't know, Coco at frontiertower.com? Well, you better make sure that the domains, she sent the email from frontiertower.com and it's in fact Coco. And so what I do, well, it is that domain frontiertower.com would just be signing the actual contents of this email. When I receive it in my inbox, it would verify that signature. And then that's what shows, yes, that is frontiertower.com's public key. And so that email, in fact, came from her at that domain. And so what is actually going on here is the recipient is verifying an RSA signature of the hash of all that information. What we can do is we can stuff all this into a ZK proof. And so we've done this with, probably half a dozen to a dozen different compilers. You have to have different speed trade-offs and different size trade-offs. And we built a ton of infrastructure around this to actually verify this all in a very fast way, including her Redis compiler from scratch. And what does this actually give you? It allows you to verify any piece of data that's in your inbox. You can arbitrarily extract and hide information. You can prove it to wherever you want. And you can keep arbitrary parts of it identities traced. This seems like somewhat simple, like, okay, I can prove things from my email. What is the point of that? But there's a lot of quite interesting applications you can make with this, and a lot of really interesting infrastructure that goes into this. This is like a breakdown of all the different kind of things that we needed to build the most simple kind of application that we have tracked away for the users. So for instance, we have like this registry on the left side, like the kind of represented by the docs, of all the different kind of proofs you can make. And you can just go into our registry and say, I want to prove I took an Uber trip yesterday. It'll just probably be on the registry and you can go ahead and prove it. We had to build like custom DK rights compilers. That's the like second thing. We have like an SDK that lets you like very easily use it in an app. So we've had people spin up full apps with DK email in like an hour. And then we had this archive, which is quite cool. So because these public private keys rotate, we have to be like, the public key from 2019 from any of these websites is gone forever. And so what we could do is we can actually like archive all the keys from today onward. And then we have this cool like GCD reverse engineering algorithm. We can get old expired keys as well, which is quite cool. We make all of that, available for already users. That also applies outside of ZK context. Like for instance, lawyers when they had a crunch of emails that prove something about the other side, they would prove, hey, I'm going to show you in a deposition that this email that implicates this person is in fact valid. But I don't want to reveal a bunch of private information in email. I don't want to reveal the exact amount of money or whatever. And currently, the way the lawyers do this is just trust me, bro. And what they could actually do is if they use this archive, knew about the archive, and you say, oh yes, we have these keys of the old emails we wouldn't be able to prove before. We can use these emails to redact that information and prove to the lawyer. So it's quite compelling. And I think could make a lot of the legal discovery a lot more verifiable on the other side. Before, so we had the layers of UK circuits and the application at the bottom. In this case, we're showing account recovery. You could imagine, we're going to talk about dozens of different applications. So yeah, maybe committing a little bit from, the high level of the technologies and more like use cases and ideas. This is what our registry looks like on the right side. You can see there's all sorts of different proofs. You can prove you have a Twitter account and what the Twitter handle is, and not regular your email address, for instance. So you can prove you were accepted to a conference, that you went to a residency, or that you were to get a PR. And these are all quite compelling to show both other humans and you've done certain things. The example I mentioned earlier around the legal definition stuff can also be used for things like whistleblowing, where I can prove to you I got an email from somebody, I'm going to hide parts of my identity and still release that online. And this will, I think, become increasingly more important, especially as we see whistleblowing, especially from large AI labs, become extremely relevant for whether or not community is going to make it. Apart from just whistleblowing, you can see lots of things around, for instance, marketplaces. Because you can verifiably prove you took some action, you can now build a market on top of that. So what ZKBTP did is they took, you sold a domain or bought a domain on Namecheap. So now you have this domain. Because you can get an email confirmation and prove that, you can now build a market on top of it, where I can list any domain I have that I own on Namecheap and have this kind of atomic transfer where somebody deposits money, they deposit money, they verify that I transferred the domain, and then only then it releases the money. And so you can kind of build this escrow-free market on top of any platform. This wasn't possible before because you'd have to trust some intermediary to handle Namecheap domains and also handle money and verify it's been transferred, verify the money's there, verify the domain has been sent, and it's a huge pain. Escrows have to take 10% off the top to do that. And here, there's almost no fee to do that. And you can build arbitrary markets, but you shouldn't technically be able to build markets, which is quite cool. And we designed it so that you can design a new kind of proof in just a couple of minutes and then use any existing proof on a registry, within 5 seconds just by signing into your box. And you scan the QR code, you can actually go try it out. You can do various proofs with the email you have in your inbox, and it's very intuitive. It's one click. And we found a lot of people find it quite compelling. And what is actually happening behind the scenes here, when I define a pattern, I'm trying to prove my career username, I'll define something very simple through a UI, which ends up compounding something like this, which is just I'm going to prove that in the email it says email is meant for a handle. I'm going to prove that handle is valid. I'm going to show the users a DRM address, for instance, if they want to commit to that. And then I'm going to have some metadata about the size for Gmail. And this allows you to make this kind of proof very quickly. There's lots of weird kind of proof people have made. You can verify you signed a document, like an official legal document. You can prove you took a flight. You can prove your part slot workspace for a company. You can prove you exported your data. We had a group that basically built a data marketplace on top of this. So they took, for instance, that you exported all of your user data from OpenAI, and they would sell batches of that to Anthropic. And basically, you have to verify that you actually that data export was actually valid, and they would do the ZK email proof. You can prove you're a developer. You can publish an NPM package. You can prove you've completed a GitHub issue. You can prove you've done a KYC. And it turns out a lot of people have found this quite useful. It's really just some abstract thing. Multiple people have deployed this into production. I'll give some examples. Your Friend Passport is going to announce this soon of you can now prove in one click, a set of your identities. So for instance, that you took some Uber trips or made sandflowers. We had deployment earlier with Jupyter where they proved that users weren't Sybil attackers. So how do they do it? They flag a bunch of sketchy accounts. Now they had to prove that they had done two human-like actions. So for instance, it's the one for Uber. They would prove, yes, I have a Uber that has a subject, your Uber ride receipt. It was sent, more than a month ago, and sometime in the last 2 years. They'll expose when the first 3 characters are already null of the whole email. Has some hashes in the wallet that they correspond to. And with this, people could actually very effectively in single click prove that they were not a Sybil attacked it. And we're also working with ENS to put directly email addresses on chain. So for instance, you can now pay any email address directly from MetaMask. You just type in email address, replace, add .ztml that is at the end, and it'll automatically resolve within any wallet that you use because that's effectively the ENS name. And so now if you sign up on our site, you claim your DNS name from your email, will automatically register that to your wallet address, and now you can receive all funds that were sent to you. So that's quite interesting. You can actually sign up our like demo here if you want to try it out. Let me know if it works or doesn't work. This is quite recent that we put this up. And apart from this kind of identity verification or information verification side of things, we also worked a bunch to try to make wallets feel more like things. One of the problems with wallets is that they kind of aren't very intuitive for the average user. But if you could add one-click login via CK email, it looks like a Gmail login. If you can confirm transactions via emails again, you get like 2FA level security. And if you have account recovery, then suddenly you don't have this issue if you let me remember the seed phrase and not move their accounts and things like that. And so we built like a full module where lots of wallets can add account recovery very easily. We're already working on deploying that, multiple of our partners. That's kind of what the email login looks like. You can just hit sign in Google and everything will happen behind the scenes. This is what the like safe sign looks like. So we added emails as signers into safes. So you can directly put your email address there as a signer, and then every time you review a transaction, they know what get to email, hey, you sure you want to do this? And they can just reply to execute. You can also try this demo out. If you go here, you have a fork safe UI to add this kind of email feature. Account recovery, this is like Clay. If they put it to production, you can add an email guardian. The email guardian will get an email, or you should want to recover this account. And they want to, when you lose your asset, you recover your account. Any guardian can do that. It's also in production. There's lots more things left to build, like lots of new weird marketplaces, lots of weird new, information you can prove. One that I want someone to build is like a restaurant reservation trader. Like you prove you have the reservation at open table or something, and then somebody else can buy it from you directly, and the whole thing can happen like atomically. It'll be quite interesting. There's just lots of weird stuff you can build by kind of proving things you have. And these signatures don't just stop on email. You kind of extend it to all sorts of different documents. There's DNS, websites, passports, signed PS or DocuSign, even execution of the app on your phone. Do you have like signed images, signed locations, things like that? And this kind of ZK email stuff is just scratching the surface on like what you can actually do with these signatures, these proofs. We think long-term, cryptography, fake the signatures is the one thing that an LLM cannot come up with or hallucinate. And so in the long term, makes that street very relevant. And I think there's a ton of weird new technology rabbit holes to drive down if you're excited about this kind of future. And a lot of different organizations are working on making that happen. If you want to read more, our Telegram is out there. Prefer to ask a question if you want. Build with it. Slides that I use then are on the right side. Let people scan. And then if you want to actually try the demos, you can go to our website, zk.email, and they're all linked on the project section or the blog post section. You want to dive into specific kind of one of these I showed here. But hopefully this is helpful to both, inspire, encourage, and explain the kind of different things you can do with ZK periods that people are going to learn that today. Sweet. Thank you. Yeah, I'll take questions, Stepper.
How do you prove my data with all the tasks? So let's say I make a restaurant reservation, I put the restaurant reservation Marshall list and sell it, and then I cancel it right afterwards, but I don't reveal let me know.
Yeah, so the way you would kind of sell a restaurant reservation, and the main thing you would verify is the actual transferred email. So for instance, if you transfer a reservation, both parties will likely get an email, first person saying you've transferred up your reservation, the second person saying you now have a reservation. And it's only when one of those is proved does the money release to the other side. So the person puts money, it's risk-free because the reservation of the transfer, that money can never be unlocked to the seller.
Yeah. So question. I think our either reason say to be honest, I'll be get up counts. People a reasonable last email in Canvas.
Right, yeah. So you could kind of prove dates if you want as well. So it's a question what can you prove? You use timestamp to else. Because you can also timestamp, you can usually prove that as well. Yeah.
Oh, so that'd be a bug question, but what is the cost structure with the ledger summit? Right? What's the absolute value that necessarily says versus the cost per forging that in gas such as said contracts across the say keynote and the content that represents? What's the thing, man, bro?
Yeah, so I think the cost structure we really tried to make it as accessible as possible. So the interesting thing about the emails is not that it costs, where 1 second someone's trying to send the email, so that's where 1 second, something like that. It's more because you're verifying the domain to sender, there's some like validity that has this. You're verifying, okay, this got sent from Twitter. This must be like a legitimate thing. I think that's kind of where the cost for the email comes in terms of the proof. It depends. Like you want it to be zero cost. We got client-side proving. So we just happen to use this browser. It's pretty fast now. We used OR through the browser, and it can happen like 9 to 10 seconds on most consumer devices. And so you can make it zero cost if you want. If you want it to be super fast, you don't want it to be sub 5 seconds on a server. That'll be like a couple of cents generally. And if you actually want to go around the blockchain, I think it depends on your data availability guarantee. If you want on L1 or on like an L2 is maybe another couple of cents. If you really care about cost, you can aggregate them and then post them, and then it's like basically free, or like extremely low cost. Yeah, super. Sweet. Yeah, appreciate it. Yeah, I'll be in the bag if you want to ask more questions. But yeah, thank you.
All right, give it up for years from CK Email. Thanks.